welcome to our deep dive into the world of economics.
Right.
We're going to be exploring how different economic systems work,
Okay.
especially here in the U.S.
Sounds good.
Our main source is a chapter from a sociology textbook, which, might sound a little dry,
Yeah.
but trust me,
Okay.
it gets really interesting.
All right.
We're going to uncover some surprising facts
Uh-huh.
and connect them to things that you experience every day.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much we take our economic system for granted.
Right.
We buy things, we go to work,
Yeah.
but we don't always stop and think about the bigger picture.
Yeah.
How did we get here?
Right.
And what are the challenges ahead?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The first thing that stood out to me was this idea that an economy is more than just money and markets.
Okay.
The textbook defines it as a social institution for managing resources, which made me realize it's really about how people interact and cooperate to get things done.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Think about it this way.
Okay.
Even something as simple as your morning coffee relies on an incredibly complex economic system.
Wow.
From the farmers who grew the beans
Right.
to the baristas who made your latte, countless people played a role in bringing that cup to your hand.
It's incredible when you think about it.
Yeah.
And that's actually a perfect example of what the textbook calls organic solidarity.
Oh, okay.
It's this idea that in complex societies, we all specialize in different jobs
Right.
and become dependent on each other.
Yeah.
It's a far cry from the early days of bartering and simple trade.
Right. And that shift from simple to complex economies had a huge impact on how societies are structured.
Yeah.
One of the key insights from the textbook is that the transition to agriculture was a pivotal moment.
Okay.
It wasn't just about growing crops. It was about the emergence of new concepts like land ownership
Oh, wow.
and money,
Yeah.
which laid the foundation for the economic systems we have today.
That's so interesting because we often think of land ownership as a given,
Yeah.
but it really emerged as a result of this economic shift.
Right.
It makes you realize how much our economic systems are intertwined with our social structures and beliefs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, fast forward a few centuries,
Okay.
and you have another major turning point.
Right.
The Industrial Revolution.
Okay.
The textbook goes into detail about the inventions, but what I found fascinating was the lasting impact
Yeah.
it had on the types of jobs we do today.
Oh, interesting.
We shifted from an economy primarily based on agriculture to one dominated by manufacturing.
And that shift brought its own set of challenges.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like worker exploitation
Yeah.
and the rise of inequality.
Right.
The textbook doesn't shy away from those complexities,
No.
but it also highlights how the Industrial Revolution ultimately led to the post-industrial
Okay.
information-based economy we live in now.
Right.
Yeah, so we've moved from making things with our hands to manipulating information.
Uh-huh.
Think about the rise of the service industry
Right.
and the incredible growth of technology.
It's huge.
We're now in an era where data is a valuable commodity,
Yeah.
and the skills needed to succeed in the workforce have evolved dramatically.
For sure.
It makes you wonder,
Yeah.
where do we fit into all of this?
Right.
What kind of economy are we actually living in here in the U.S.?
Well, the textbook dives into two major economic systems,
Okay.
capitalism and socialism.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where things get really interesting
Yeah.
because it challenges some of the assumptions we might have.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Right.
Most of us would say the U.S. is a capitalist country, right?
I think so, yeah.
But the textbook points out that it's not that simple.
Right. It's not a black and white situation.
Okay.
Capitalism, in its purest form,
Yeah.
is all about private ownership,
Uh-huh.
profit-driven businesses,
Right.
and competition. But even in the U.S., the government plays a significant role in regulating the economy.
Okay.
Think about things like antitrust laws,
Right.
minimum wage,
Mm.
and social safety net programs.
So it's more like a mixed economy.
Precisely,
Uh,
with elements of both capitalism and government intervention.
God.
And the textbook argues that this mixed approach has actually been a key factor in the U.S.'s economic success.
Interesting.
It's allowed for innovation and entrepreneurship,
Uh-huh.
while also providing some level of protection for workers and consumers.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But what about socialism?
Okay.
How does that fit into the picture?
Socialism, as the textbook describes it,
Yeah.
focuses on collective ownership
Okay.
and a more equitable distribution of wealth.
Mhm.
It's about prioritizing societal benefit over individual profit.
Okay.
While it hasn't gained as much traction in the U.S.,
Right.
it's a dominant system in other parts of the world.
The textbook mentions that there are different schools of thought within socialism, some advocating for complete government control and others preferring a more decentralized approach.
Right. There's no one-size-fits-all model for socialism.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to note that there's even a concept called market socialism that incorporates some elements of capitalism. So even within these seemingly opposing systems, there's a spectrum of ideas and implementations.
So it seems like economic systems are much more fluid and complex than we often realize.
Absolutely.
It's not just a simple choice between capitalism and socialism.
Right.
There's a whole range of possibilities and hybrid models.
Yeah, and as the world becomes increasingly interconnected, these lines blur even further.
Okay.
Which brings us to another key concept from the textbook, convergence theory.
This idea of convergence theory really caught my attention.
Yeah.
What's fascinating is that it suggests that as economies develop, societies tend to become more similar.
Okay.
So regardless of whether a country starts out more capitalist or socialist, they might eventually converge towards a similar economic model.
Right. And the textbook provides some compelling examples of this.
Like what?
Think about post-World War II. Germany, France, and Japan.
Oh, okay.
They all experienced significant economic growth.
Yeah.
And adopted many of the same features as developed capitalist economies.
It's like this invisible force pulling economies towards a common ground as they progress. But the textbook also acknowledges that there are factors that can hinder convergence.
Yes. Things like lack of access to capital, political instability, and ingrained social structures can all create barriers to convergence.
Got it.
It's not a guaranteed outcome, but it's a powerful concept that helps us understand the broader trends shaping the global economy.
It makes you wonder what forces are shaping the U.S. economy right now.
Yeah.
Are we converging with other countries?
Right.
Or are we charting our own path?
Well, that's a question that leads us right into the next big topic.
Okay.
Globalization.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting.
Hold on. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Okay.
Let's start by defining what we mean by globalization.
Let's unpack that first.
Okay.
So globalization.
Yeah.
It's one of those buzzwords we hear all the time.
Yeah.
But what does it actually mean for us?
Well, the textbook defines globalization as the increasing interconnectedness of economies, cultures, and governments around the world. It's driven by international trade technology and the movement of people and ideas.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people have mixed feelings about globalization.
Whoa, yeah.
Some see it as a force for good, while others see it as a threat.
That's understandable.
Yeah.
Globalization is complex.
Right.
And it has both positive and negative consequences.
Okay.
The textbook uses NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, as an example of how globalization can be both beneficial and disruptive.
Right. I remember learning about NAFTA in school.
It
was supposed to create jobs and boost the economies of the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. But it also led to job losses in certain industries as companies moved production to countries with lower wages.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that highlights one of the key tensions of globalization. The potential for winners and losers.
Oh, I see.
While some benefit from increased trade and access to cheaper goods, others may face job displacement or wage stagnation.
So it's not as simple as saying globalization is good or bad.
Right.
It really depends on who you are and what your perspective is.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the textbook doesn't shy away from those complexities.
Okay, good.
It encourages us to think critically about the impact of globalization on different groups of people, both within the U.S. and around the world.
One of the things that struck me was this idea of global assembly lines.
Oh, okay.
The textbook uses the example of Apple products, where the design happens in the U.S. The components are manufactured in various countries.
Right.
And the assembly takes place somewhere else entirely.
Yeah, it's all over the place.
It's mind-boggling how interconnected everything is.
It really is.
And it highlights the fact that our economy is no longer confined by national borders.
Right.
We're all part of a global network of production and consumption.
Exactly.
This brings us to another key concept.
Right.
The international division of labor.
Okay.
The textbook talks about how certain countries specialize in specific types of production, which can lead to both economic efficiency and potential exploitation.
Yes. For example, many developing countries specialize in manufacturing, often at lower wages and with fewer labor protections.
Right.
This can create opportunities for economic growth,
Yeah.
But it also raises concerns about worker rights and environmental sustainability.
It's a lot to grapple with.
It is.
Globalization has created incredible opportunities.
Yeah.
But it's also brought new challenges that we're still trying to figure out how to address.
And these challenges are particularly relevant when we look at the U.S. workforce specifically.
Right.
The textbook highlights several trends and challenges that are shaping the future of work in America.
One of the biggest trends is the decline in manufacturing jobs.
Right. We've seen this happening for decades, and it's had a significant impact on certain communities and regions of the country.
The textbook points out that this decline isn't just about companies moving production overseas.
Right. It's also about automation.
Oh, okay.
As technology advances, machines are becoming increasingly capable of performing tasks that were once done by human workers.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's also a bit unsettling.
I know.
If machines can do more and more jobs, what does that mean for the future of human work?
That's a question a lot of people are asking.
Yeah.
The textbook doesn't offer easy answers, but it does emphasize the importance of adaptability and lifelong learning. The jobs of the future will require different skills. And workers will need to be prepared to constantly learn and evolve.
So it's not just about getting a degree and then coasting for the rest of your career.
Exactly.
It's about staying ahead of the curve and being willing to adapt to new technologies and industries.
Exactly. And this is where education and training become even more crucial.
Yeah.
The textbook talks about the need for a workforce that's equipped with the skills to thrive in a rapidly changing economy.
It makes you think about the advice we often give young people.
Like what?
Follow your passion, do what you love.
Right.
But what happens when the jobs that align with our passions are disappearing or being automated?
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
It's not just about following your passion.
Okay.
It's also about being realistic about the job market and acquiring skills that are in demand.
Right.
The textbook encourages us to think about careers in a more dynamic way.
To be open to new possibilities.
Right.
And to embrace lifelong learning.
It sounds like we need a combination of passion, practicality, and adaptability to navigate the future of work.
I think so.
But it's not just about individual workers adapting.
Right.
It's also about broader systemic changes, right?
Absolutely. The textbook talks about the need for policies that support workers during times of transition.
Okay.
That invest in education and training.
Right.
And that address income inequality.
And this brings us back to the discussion of capitalism and socialism.
Okay.
Are there lessons we can learn from other economic systems about how to create a more equitable and sustainable workforce?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
The textbook doesn't advocate for one system over another.
Okay.
But it does encourage us to look at the strengths and weaknesses of different models. For example, some countries with more socialist leanings have stronger social safety nets and more robust worker protections.
Right. And those policies can provide a cushion for workers.
During times of economic disruption,
Yeah.
it's not about adopting one system wholesale,
Right.
but rather about looking for creative solutions that address the specific challenges we face.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that economic systems are constantly evolving.
That's true.
What worked in the past might not work in the future.
Right.
We need to be open to new ideas and approaches.
Okay, so we've talked about globalization,
Yeah.
automation, and the changing nature of work. But there's another major issue that the textbook tackles, poverty.
Right.
And I think this is where the human element really hits home.
You're right. It's easy to get caught up in abstract economic concepts.
Yeah.
But ultimately, poverty is about real people struggling to make ends meet.
Yeah.
And the textbook challenges some of the common misconceptions about poverty in the U.S.
One of the things that surprised me was the concept of relative poverty.
Oh,
It's this idea that poverty in the U.S. is often defined in relation to the average standard of living. So even if you have a roof over your head and food on the table, you might still be considered poor
Right.
if you can't afford the same lifestyle as the average person.
Right. It's not just about absolute deprivation.
Yeah.
It's about being excluded from the mainstream.
Okay.
And this type of relative poverty can have a significant impact on people's lives,
Right.
limiting their opportunities and their ability to participate fully in society.
The textbook also points out that the official poverty statistics don't always tell the whole story.
Yeah, they don't capture things like underemployment,
Okay.
where people are working but not earning enough to make ends meet,
Right.
or the working poor who are holding down jobs but still living below the poverty line.
Exactly. And this is where the conversation about wages and income inequality becomes so important.
Right.
The textbook argues that stagnant wages and the rising cost of living are major contributors to poverty in the U.S.
Yeah, it's like this vicious cycle.
Right.
Even if people are working hard, they're not always able to earn enough to escape poverty.
And the textbook highlights another factor that makes it even harder.
What's that?
The expense of being poor.
Ah, yes. This is a really insightful point.
Yeah.
It's the idea that people living in poverty often end up paying more for basic necessities because they don't have access to the same resources and opportunities as those with higher incomes.
For example, they might have to rely on more expensive forms of credit or pay higher prices for groceries at smaller neighborhood stores.
Right.
Because they don't have transportation to get to larger supermarkets with better deals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not just about earning less. It's about having to pay more for the same things, which makes it even harder to get ahead.
And this is where the need for systemic change becomes even more apparent.
Absolutely.
We need policies that address the root causes of poverty, not just the symptoms.
Things like raising the minimum wage, expanding access to affordable housing, and providing affordable childcare can make a huge difference in people's lives.
It's about creating a system that supports everyone, not just those at the top.
Right.
And this brings us back to the idea of social responsibility.
Okay.
What role do individuals play in addressing these challenges?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
The textbook doesn't offer any easy answers,
Right.
but it does encourage us to be aware of the issues, to engage in thoughtful dialogue, and to advocate for policies that promote economic justice.
It's about recognizing that we're all part of a larger system, and that our choices and actions have an impact on others.
And this idea of interconnectedness brings us back to the concept of career inheritance.
Oh, what?
The textbook points out that children often end up in similar occupations as their parents,
Right.
perpetuating existing socioeconomic patterns.
It makes you wonder how much of our career choices are truly our own,
Right.
and how much is shaped by our upbringing and the opportunities available to us.
That's a fascinating question.
Yeah.
And it highlights the importance of exposure and access to different career paths. We need to encourage young people to explore a wide range of possibilities, not just follow in their parents' footsteps, especially if those paths are no longer viable in today's economy.
I completely agree. And this is where mentorship and career counseling can play such a vital role.
Right.
Connecting young people with experienced professionals in various fields can help them gain valuable insights, make informed decisions, and develop the skills they need to succeed.
Mentorship is so powerful.
It is.
Having someone who believes in you, guides you, and shares their knowledge and experience can be transformative.
And it's not just about young people.
Right.
Career transitions are becoming increasingly common throughout our working lives. Having a network of support and guidance can be invaluable during those times.
Speaking of transitions,
Yeah.
the rapid advancements in technology are constantly reshaping the workforce.
Right.
The textbook mentions automation.
But what about artificial intelligence?
That's a whole other level of disruption.
It is.
AI has the potential to automate even more complex tasks,
Right.
which could have both positive and negative consequences for workers.
On the one hand, it could free up humans from mundane and repetitive work,
Yeah.
allowing us to focus on more creative and fulfilling tasks.
But it also raises concerns about job displacement
Right.
and the need for workers to adapt and acquire new skills to stay relevant in the changing job market.
It's both exciting and a little bit daunting
Yeah.
to think about the future of work in the age of AI.
It is.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
a rapidly evolving landscape that will require us to be adaptable,
Right.
lifelong learners.
Well, it seems like lifelong learning is a key theme that's emerged from this deep dive.
I think so.
Whether it's adapting to globalization,
Right.
navigating a polarized workforce, or staying ahead of technological advancements, the ability to learn and evolve is essential for thriving in today's economy. Couldn't agree more. And it's not just about acquiring specific skills.
Right.
It's about developing critical thinking, problem solving, and communication skills.
Right.
Those transferable abilities that are valuable across a wide range of industries and careers.
It's about being agile, adaptable, and embracing change as a constant.
Exactly. The future of work is uncertain.
Yeah.
But those who are prepared to learn, grow, and evolve will be the ones who thrive.
Wow. We've really covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
It's been fascinating,
yeah,
but also a little overwhelming.
I agree. There's a lot to unpack when it comes to economics
Right.
and all the forces that are shaping our world.
Yeah.
But I think that's also what makes it so important to understand, these systems and trends.
Yeah.
They have a real impact on all of our lives.
Right. It's not just theoretical.
It's no.
It's about jobs,
Yeah.
opportunities, and the kind of future we're building for ourselves and future generations.
Exactly. And one of the key takeaways for me is that there are no easy answers.
Right.
The textbook doesn't, present like a simple solution to poverty
Yeah.
or a clear roadmap for navigating globalization.
Right.
It's about understanding the complexities
Yeah.
and being willing to engage in thoughtful dialogue to find solutions.
I appreciate that the textbook doesn't shy away from those complexities.
Yeah.
It acknowledges the trade-offs and the different perspectives involved.
Right.
And it emphasizes that we all have a role to play in shaping the future of our economy.
Absolutely. We can't just leave it to policymakers and economists.
Right.
Our individual choices as consumers, voters, and community members all have an impact.
So if someone is listening to this and feeling inspired to make a difference, where should they start?
I think the first step is awareness.
Okay.
Educate yourself about the issues, learn about different economic systems, and understand how they impact your own community.
And then what are some concrete actions people can take?
There are so many possibilities.
Okay.
You could support businesses that treat their workers fairly, advocate for policies that promote economic justice, or volunteer your time to organizations working to address poverty and inequality.
Those are all great suggestions.
Yeah.
It's about using your voice, your choices, and your resources to create positive change.
Right. And don't underestimate the power of conversation.
Oh, yeah?
Talk to your friends and family about these issues.
Yeah.
Share what you've learned from this deep dive.
Yeah.
And encourage others to engage in these important conversations.
I think that's such a crucial point.
Yeah.
We need to move beyond the sound bites and the partisan divides.
Right.
And really engage in thoughtful dialogue about the kind of world we want to create.
Exactly. It's about finding common ground.
Yeah.
Listening to different perspectives. And working together to build a more equitable and sustainable future.
Well said.
Thank you.
I think that's a great note to end on.
Yeah.
This deep dive has been a journey.
It has.
And it's left me with a lot to think about.
Me too.
It's a reminder that economics is not just about numbers and graphs.
No.
It's about people, choices, and the power we have to shape our world.
So to our listener, as you continue to explore the world of economics, remember that you're not just an observer.
Right.
You're an active participant.
Yes.
Your choices matter. Your voice matters. And you have the power to make a difference.
Well said.
Thank you.
Keep learning.
Yes.
Keep questioning. And keep striving for a better future.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.